Hi, today we're going to talk about the 3 sins of boot fitting. I have my friend Peter here who's kindly allowed me to let him be our test dummy. And so we're going to talk about his boots and his fit and what he experienced in these boots and what we did with these boots. So that's kind of where we're going. The 3 sins of boot fitting are, the first one I always see is the boots are too big. Second thing I see is the boots are too wide. And the third one I see is the boots are too stiff. We'll handle all 3 of those. We'll talk a little bit about footbeds and how all of that works together. So let's go and look at Peter's old boot compared to Peter's new boot. So the first thing, if you were at a boot fitter, he'd look at your feet, he'd have you take off your socks, he'd have you look at your legs straight, he'd see if you're bow-legged or knock-kneed, and you guys would be talking about boots. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take Peter's old boot apart, and this boot is a 328. A lot of what people do when they buy a boot is they come in and they say, well, my street size is a 10. So they immediately go and buy or want to see a 10 size boot. The street shoe size and the boot size shouldn't be the same. You really want to downsize the boot. And so this is a great example of the boot size. And so I'm going to put Peter in his old boot. So this is your right boot, Pete. So go ahead and jump in there. Yep. Okay. And so what a boot fitter is going to have you do is he's going to say, go ahead and put both legs square. All right. He's going to say, put your toe up to the front of the boot. And then what he's going to say is, drive your leg a little bit forward so it's pressing on the front of the boot. And what he's going to do, he's going to look at the back of the boot. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my cell phone so I can look at the back of the boot, and we'll cut this in as we go. So we'll do a little video here, and you can see in there that there's a lot of space there. And as an example, what I want to show you is the proper fit would be a performance fit would be somewhere around the width of a broomstick, meaning the back of your heel is a broomstick away from the back of the boot. Now I'm going to put this, if you hold that up for me, I'm going to put that in the back here. We'll go back and we'll video this and we'll cut this in. You can see that in the broomstick view, there's a whole lot of space behind that broomstick. Pete probably has 3 fingers of space, maybe even a little bit more, 3 fingers of space between his heel and the back of the boot. You want, at most, 2 fingers of space. If you look at a broomstick, it's a little less than 2 fingers of space. And that would be called a performance fit. This would be called a relaxed fit. Both are acceptable. Any more than that, what happens is you start moving around in the boot and you don't get good control. Now, at the same time, he's got this boot. Let's go look at what the boot we already fixed up for Pete is, just so you can see the difference real quick, and then we can talk about all the specifics. Oh, the other thing that I didn't mention is in this boot, Pete had some room that he would move around like this in the forefoot of the boot. Well, that space doesn't necessarily get taken up by the liner, okay? So what you're looking for in a boot is that I have a boot that's the finger space width we just talked about, and that the 2 sides of your feet, big toe, little toe, are very close or touching the sides of the boot. So we're going to go ahead and open this boot up. Now, what's the difference in this boot? Remember we just said that was a 28.5 Mondo size? This one is a 307 millimeter. It's a Mondo size of 26.5. That's 2 full sizes down. Now, again, Pete's foot's about a size 10. This boot is a size 9. We downsized them. So let's go look at this boot. you can see we have stock liners in here. And so go ahead and put yourself in there. And then we'll take the video camera. Go ahead and put your foot to the front, knees forward. Now we're going to take a video of this one. And you can see here, that's about 2 fingers. We can probably stick the broomstick in there. Let's see. Let's go put the broomstick in this side, Pete. Okay, go ahead and line yourself up in there with the broomstick for me, please. Okay, so if we go in there and start looking, you can see that that broomstick is just about perfect. There's a little bit of space. I would call this, go ahead and pull that out. I would call this a recreational, relaxed fit, but not a fit that's overly big. So if Peter wanted to get a super performance fit, we would even size this down one more size. I can tell you, like on my boots, my spacing between my rear heel and the rear of the boot is 1 finger. So it's a really tight fit, but that's a performance fit. And if you're an advanced skier, expert skier, you're probably going to want something in that level. So the last thing I see all the time on the ski slope is the boot is too stiff. What's that mean for somebody? It means that you get to here and you try to press the front of your boot and you can't because the boot is so stiff. And so what happens is you start, if you will, in the back seat and you're using the back of your skis to turn. You don't get any ability to use ski shape and ski dynamics to turn the ski because you're in the back of the ski in the back of the boot. When the boot's a little bit softer, it's going to make it easier for you to move to the front of the ski and engage the tip. So when we talk about this, remember, we're in a 70, 75 degree room. We have lights on, so it's warm in here. And so I'm going to ask Peter to stand up and I'm going to have him flex those 2 boots. And as you can watch, go ahead and flex up and back a few times. For Peter, both of these boots have a nice flex pattern to them. Pete, what did you tell me when you got into your old boot? What did you say?
Slippers, very comfortable.
Okay, and so there's a lot of movement. Okay, and where's your movement?
Side to side, front to back, even top to bottom. It's just
okay. And so now we're in a boot that's a little bit smaller. It's still a relatively relaxed fit. It's not a super performance fit. So give me some feedback on this boot.
Snug, but not uncomfortable, but definitely snug compared to the right boot.
Okay. Side to side, up to down.
Side to side, yet no movement, up down. A little bit of movement front to back when I flex.
Okay, so let's talk about that just for a second. That's a really good stopping point here to understand about boots. When you buy the correct size boot and you stand straight up and down, your toes are going to go to the front of the boot and it's going to feel like your toes are cramped. That's the right fit because what he just said, and say it again, when you flex forward.
Oh, yeah, flex forward, the toes seem to move away from the front just a smidge. Is that what you should do?
Yeah, and so that's actually the correct fit. His toes are sliding back into the back of the boot because he wants to be in a centered position. So that whole relationship sets you square and flat on the boot. Now we've talked about the 3 sins. Let's talk about how to make this work. And when you're at a boot fitter, some of the things you want that boot fitter to do for you to make sure you have the right fit, to make sure that you need a footbed, you don't need a footbed. And so let's take a minute just to talk about footbeds. The footbed in these boots, the manufacturer spends about 20 cents on, okay? It really doesn't have a lot. It's just a flat footbed, and there's a little bit of arch support, little bit of heel support, but a very small heel cup, okay? If you're fortunate enough and you have the quote average foot, you can get away with an insert that has way more stability over the arch, has a nice heel cup, and then the boot fitter can just trim this to your foot if you're lucky. If you want to go to the next step, this is a semi-fitted footbed. It's fitted to me. There's lots of little things that are happening in this footbed. It's got a really nice arch to it. There's a little bump right here that deals with underneath my little neuroma in my foot. It just naturally did that. And for somebody that needs more flexibility and taking up shock, this is probably a pretty good footbed. If you're one of those people that needs a fully custom footbed with a heel post and making this bottom section of the boot stiff, then you're going to want a completely custom footbed. I don't have my custom footbeds here today, but what happens is they actually put in under a footbed like this a post that goes all the way to here, and then they grind it to fit your boot, and it puts a lot more stability and rigidity into the foot. We're going to talk about things that you want the boot fitter to do for you to make sure you're going to get the right footbed. So if I put Peter into a position where he's lined up, I look at his tibial plateau and his ankle bone, and I line them up so they're 90, 90, 90, both of them. I'm going to leave this sock on. We're only going to do this with one foot. So the first test that you want somebody to do is he's going to line himself up like this and straight. And then I'm going to take Peter's toe and just leave your foot there. And I'm just going to lift his toe up. And you can see that it has some flexibility to it, you know. And we take his other toes and kind of take a look. And I'm looking at how his arch moves. Does it move up? Does it move up a lot? Does it not move up at all? And so those are indicators of what's going to happen with the footbed and his arch. The next thing I want to do is look at his ankle and see how much flexion he has in his ankle. So what I'm going to ask him to do is, keeping his heel on the ground, take your ankle and lift your toes as high as you can. And you can see here, he has about 2 fingers, which is the average that somebody would have lifting their foot up like that. So he has pretty much the quote perfect average foot. If you looked at my foot, I have much more extension in my ankle, and I go way, if I put my foot down here real quick and I go way up, you can see I already have 3 fingers in here, and this thing can just go up even higher. So I have I have an over flexible ankle, and that means things are going to happen or change in my ski boot to make that work for me. Now, here's an example of a good boot fitter. So if we put Peter back where he was, and I did this with Peter and moved his ankle up, and his ankle, relax a little bit, his ankle only went up that much, just like I can only get 1 finger under here. He's got a very inflexible ankle. And if that was the case, some of the complaints I hear out on the slope when I'm teaching somebody is, you know, Greg, when I flex forward into the front of my boot, my heel always comes up. That's an indicator that he might have a really stiff ankle, and there's a lot of things that we can do at the boot fitting level to fix that. Ladies that have high heel shoes and wear high heels all the time, what happens is their Achilles shortens. Well, if your Achilles shortens, you can't lift your ankle up like this. They would have the same problem. And so these are things that if a boot fitter looks at you for this, he can fix it before you get on the slope. It's going to improve your skiing. So the next thing I want to talk about is alignment. A boot fitter is going to look at your legs, see if they're bow-legged, see if they're knock-kneed, see if they're straight, and align you up with the back cuff of this boot. We'll put them in the boot. This boot has alignment ability here. Let me bring you another boot. Has a little more capability to do what we just talked about here. If we look here at this particular boot, it has an eccentric pin here and here. This allows this boot easily to go here or here. Aligning the cuff up to the back of your calf aligns you to a correct position and actually can aid at not having to cant your boot. What's a cant? So some people are really bow-legged, and if they were to sit in a boot straight and they're skiing on the slope, they're actually, both feet are kind of this way and this way, and they can't get on the inside edge easily. They have to really roll. A boot fitter can see that and actually put a cant to the bottom of the boot, a cant being an angle to the bottom of the boot to make that deviation go away. So what we're looking for is that we're always sitting flat to the ground. When we're standing naturally, we want that boot, both boots, to sit flat. Now, when I roll one way or another, I get the edge, I get correct pressure, and everything is working correctly. Next thing to talk about is the boot liner. Peter's really lucky. He has kind of the perfect, if you will, average foot. So for him, when we get all done with his boot, we could probably use the inexpensive insole. It's got a nice arch to it, it's got a nice cup. And so the things that we would look at, the boot fitter would look at, I'm gonna give me your foot here. He'd put your foot in this footbed, and he's looking to see that that arch is correct. Your arch isn't too long, or your arch isn't too short, that it marries up correctly. He's just really lucky. He's got the perfect foot for a ski boot. If he was so inclined because something else was happening and he felt that he wasn't getting the performance he was looking for, he could go to this next footbed, and this is my footbed, but we'll put him in here real quick. You can see here, it's a little bit longer. It needs to be cut to the boot. Let's talk about custom aligners. So we talked about footbeds. The footbed sets you up so you're now married to the bottom of your boot, which is married to the bottom of your skis, and what you're doing on the snow actually translates up into your foot, and you're not compensating. That's the big thing. You're not compensating. Lastly, some people need to have a custom liner. Some of the things that we might need to do on a ski boot is, if we look at Peter's foot, we can start seeing he's got normal ankles. They might be a little bit bony right here on this side. That might be able to be taken up in the liner. If not, very easily we can press out part of the ankle bone with a boot press and make that fit perfect for him so he doesn't feel any rubbing or pressure. We're looking at other parts of his foot, seeing if there's anything else. He's got a medium foot, maybe a little bit wide here. We're looking at bones here or bones here. He's right above his navicular here. He's got a little bit of a bony protrusion here, and that might cause him some problems on the boot. What we can do in the boot, a good boot fitter will take his tongue, cut the tongue, make a little bit of incision in the tongue, grind some material out, and that will fix that. If it still doesn't fix that, there's ways to actually press up the instep of the boot so it gives him more space. If those things aren't working, The next level is we can actually get a custom liner. A couple custom liners that I'd have you consider looking at are the Intuition liner. They make 5, 6, 7 different types of liners for ski boots. And that liner costs around $200, $250. And it'll be customized to your foot. They put it in an oven, they put your foot in the boot, cinch it down, get it all molded to your foot. It's a good fit. Another one that's a little more costly is called a zip fit. It uses a cork oil liner, meaning it's got injected cork oil in it. It molds around to your foot. Same kind of thing happens. You're going to put your foot in the boot. They're going to clamp it down. They'll warm it up. They'll clamp it down and it'll mold to your foot. What's nice about that liner is if you press it out because you're skiing 100 days a year or something, you can go back and they can inject more cork oil into it. So that liner will last longer than your ski boot. Now that's more costly. That liner is somewhere between $500 and $550. So I hope I've given you kind of a quick tutorial on ski boots, the 3 sins: too big, too wide, too stiff, and what you want to look for when you go to a boot fitter that's going to make you confident that he is working to your best interest. If you have any other questions, please email me and please subscribe to the channel. Thank you.